Welcome back to the Early Weigh-In podcast. Tyler, lucky enough to be on a cruise, escaped the cold weather this week, so rocking it solo for UFC 311 going down this weekend in Los Angeles. 2024 ended on a rough stretch. Tyler and I both able to kick off 2025 with a great card. Looking at mine first, 3 money lines I released. Felt very strongly about Bruno Lopez. Already had a unit on him. The number jumped on fight day. Released another half unit there. Was like a 3-unit win on Bruno Lopez at dog odds. Thiago Moises laid some chalk minus 175. A little bit sketch. Glad it came through, but honestly, probably showed me enough that I probably won't bet Thiago Moises ever again. And then Prospect Killer does it again, plus 240 auto bet for me. Fantastic counter grappler and Christian Rodriguez. Finished up the night 6.57 units. Great night for me. Looking to keep that momentum going. And then Tyler as well, man. Really, really good night. Took a shot on Preston Parsons at plus 475. Can't hate the number. But looking down, bet on some violence last week at UFC Vegas 101. Fight doesn't go the distance, and Felipe Boons and Jose Johnson didn't have to wait long for that. Medic and Soriano, fight ends by TKO. Didn't have to wait long on that. And then the other one, under 2.5 rounds. Usually it's me getting screwed there. But yeah, Carlson Harris Ponzinibbio did not go the distance, but slipped over 2.5 rounds there for a small loss. And then, you see a minus 900 in a fight, and you see plus money for doesn't go the distance, even though it's women. It's hard to lay off that. So 1.47 unit profit for Tyler. Again, great for us both to start the year off in the green. And we got 14 fights at UFC 311. So let's get into them, man. Starting off in the first fight, flyweight division, we have Tagir Ulanbekov, decent-sized favorite here over Clayton Carpenter. We're going to start off with a little bit of disagreement. Tyler's on the Clayton Carpenter, the dog odds side. And, I think Clayton Carpenter's a pretty solid prospect who's pretty well-rounded, has pretty decent cardio. But I just feel like he is outgunned in pretty much every facet of the game here. I think Tagir Ulanbekov is going to be a step ahead of him. If the Tagir Ulanbekov from the Cody Durden fight shows up, and, I truly think that Tagir is just levels above where Clayton is right now. And size advantage, the counter grappling of Tagir, all things that I really like for him at the flyweight division. If I could think one thing I'm a bit worried about, the year layoff, Tagir on the scale at 125, he's absolutely massive. And that is, the one worry is how is he going to look on the scale? He's missed weight before. Hope it doesn't hinder the performance. But I like Tagir, man. I just think he's a much better fighter here. Bit off too much than he can chew for Clayton Carpenter. Ricky Tercios, Bernardo Sopaj at 135, rebooking from a few weeks ago. I think Bernardo Sopaj, I said it the first time, I think the UFC realized they have a pretty decent prospect here who's coming off one of the most vicious knockouts of 2024, and they gave him the guy who's, going to pose him the least danger, the least amount of threat, and that's Ricky Tercios, a guy who's swinging at air, a guy who has no power. And I just feel like Bernardo has him outgunned everywhere, man, on the feet, so much more power, way more technical. He's clearly the better striker, and I think he's a much better top wrestler as well. You would think Ricky has to win this by Bernardo gassing out again, but even then, I just don't know if Ricky does enough to step on the gas, even if that were to happen. So I'm big on the Sopaj side, but it has been a year layoff for him. That's the appropriate time to take off for a knockout like that, but, not really a fan of laying big juice on guys coming off knockouts and a rebooking at that. Staying in the 135-pound, we moved to Rinya Nakamura, taking on Muin Gafarov. As far as skill set and the wrestling, the athleticism, Rinya Nakamura is up there for one of the better prospects at 135. He just really hadn't put a stamp on things in the UFC. He's taken some short notice guys and not finished them, taking them the distance. Again, super athletic, hits hard when he does land, and he's got world-class, Olympic-level wrestling. But when he gets you down, he's not that dangerous. I don't know if his jiu-jitsu is just not up to par yet, but he's content with just riding out top time and not really good at advancing position and looking to finish the fight. On the Muin Gafarov side, he's a pretty well-rounded guy, truth be told, and he's got way more fights. He's a younger fighter, which is pretty interesting in my opinion, fought the way better guys. He's just not great really anywhere, and I do feel like he kind of fades down the stretch and liable to get held down. So I just feel like pure athleticism and wrestling will get Rinya yet again another decision win. Women's bantamweight division, Carol Hossa versus Aileen Perez. Seen a lot of action on the Hossa side. Carol Hossa minus 170, minus 180 earlier in the week, now sitting around a minus 300. And to an extent, I get it. She's the much better fighter. You can count on her to throw up way more volume, dangerous submissions off her back. She just kind of tends to fight in super close fights, and I've seen her give up takedowns. And, I don't think Aline Perez is the best fighter by no means, but I do know that she's going to go out there and attempt takedowns. In her last, I think she's won 4 of her last 5, and in those 4 fights, she's landed like 20 takedowns. So while the skill set's not there, it's still improving. She knows what she's good at. She sticks to it, and I think that's going to make a fight that's much closer than the odds indicate. What I am a bit worried about is Perez Gasson. She's shown a time or two that she can slow down deep in these fights where she has to work for these takedowns, and I do think Carol Hosa's tough enough and good enough off the mat to make her work for these. Carol Hosa, round 3, a little bit tempting, and under 2.5 at a stupid plus number is a little bit tempting. But I kind of have to agree with the sharp money here that Carol Hosa is the side, and that's one where Tyler and I are going to disagree again. He finds himself kind of thinking the underdog Ailin Perez is going to come through. We disagree. I don't want to say disagree on this next one. Grant Dawson, CDF, Carlos Diego Ferreira, men's lightweight division. I think at the end of the day, I kind of still think Grant Dawson's going to win this fight, but I think you have the ability to maybe get him at a plus money number live. I don't know how early in this fight, how well he's going to be able to find himself in dominant positions. He's a great wrestler, brings a ridiculous pace and pressure to his game. And I feel like that's how he's going to beat CDF, is with that pace and with that pressure. And it's going to have to be late in the fight because CDF's grappling is off the charts. He's one of the best anti-grapplers in the entire UFC. You see him do it time and time again, making guys like Gamrot, Rustam Khablibov, and Gregor Gillespie, our boy, making these guys work hard for their takedowns. And truth be told, Grant Dawson does not have the gas tank of somebody like a Mateus Gamrot or somebody like a Gregor Gillespie. So if CDF makes this guy work, we've seen Grant Dawson slow down against a corpse of a Ricky Glenn where he's dominating. We've seen him knocked out by a 40-year-old Bobby Green. To me, this is clearly dog or pass pre-fight on the money line. It's kind of hard for me not to bet CDF, but at 40 years old, if Grant Dawson's willing to dog one out, I feel like the tides start to turn, in the middle of this fight. So I'm ever so slightly going to side with Grant Dawson, but if you catch me playing the side, I think the value side is clearly CDF here. Moving on up to the prelims, 185, a middleweight, Zach Reese taking on newcomer Azamat Bakayev. Zach Reese was like a minus 200 something to Cedriquez Dumas. Dumas pulls out, and now Zach Reese is a plus 200 underdog. That's not something you ever like to see being on his side. I haven't dug too much on the Azamat Bakayev side, but you see an 18-3, you see a Russian, you see the OEV at the end, and you kind of expected him to come in here with some juice on the name. So I don't know if it's warranted. Haven't, again, had the time to dig into it, but, with Zach Reese on a full camp, prepared, kind of interesting. I'm going to do some digging, see if Zach Reese is worthy of some type of underdog shot, maybe a submission prop. He's a pretty slick little fighter, and I do think he was going to get through Cedriquez Dumas. Tyler and I agree here at heavyweight. Jailton Almeida taking on Sergey Spivak. I really think that Jailton Almeida is just going to come out here and land a takedown very quickly and just run through Sergey Spivak. Despite seeing Spivak throw up the armbar off his back last time, I think that's an absolute fluke. I don't think that would happen to Jailton Almeida in 100 fights if you ran it. I do think Spivak is not well-versed off his back, and I think once Almeida gets on top of him, we're going to see that. We're going to see him work them out, land ground and pound, see Sergey Spivak turn over, give up the back, give up the choke. I like Jailton Almeida to finish this fight in the first round. I feel pretty confidently about that. I see Tyler picking Jailton Almeida as well, and that's 9 times out of 10, that's his path to victory. So probably how he sees it getting this done as well. I got a parlay with Jailton Almeida and Tagir Ulanbekov. I felt it's a very chalk-heavy pay-per-view. There's some high-level fights where you can make some cases for some underdogs, but truth be told, I felt like both of those guys were leaps and bounds better than their opponent. So Jailton Almeida, Tagir Ulanbekov, 2-unit parlay for me. Moving on up the card, one of the best prospects in the UFC, Peyton Talbot, taking on Hani Barcelos. And, it's hard not to pick the minus 1,000 favorite in Peyton Talbot, who, for me in that Cameron Simon fight really showed me that he has the goods, man. His instincts in the cage, his reflexes, the power that he packs, athleticism, it all looks like it's goods, and it's destined for stardom. I do think the one inability that could hold him back is his defensive grappling. And you see a guy like Harney Barcelos, who is a multiple degree black belt, who is somebody who really could take advantage of somebody making a mistake. But Harney Barcelos is old. He's slow. He's never really been someone who's gone out there and offensively wrestled. I see guys like Landon Quinones, really tuning Barcelos up, having a lot of success. And I think Peyton Talbot's going to do the same. And the difference is I just don't think Peyton Talbot's gonna have a moment of lapse and slip up. So I got Peyton Talbot. And truth be told, he might get Raoni Barcelos out of there. So I like what I'm seeing from Peyton Talbot. It's hard to play much at minus 1,100, but I do see an under 1.5, which is plus money, even money, and that's a little bit tempting when you see a minus 1,100. So Peyton Talbot for the finish. I have to say that's how I think it goes down. Set for the prelim main event is Bogdan Guskov taking Billy Elikana. Elikana stepping in on Johnny Walker on short notice here, and truth be told. And I know it's 2025, but I was probably going to bet Johnny Walker. I really was at big dog odds. I think Bogdan hits hard. He's a little bit unorthodox with the hands down style he presents. But truth be told, I don't think he's that great. Again, just a big power, but I think he's liable to get called. I'm not really sold on his chin. I think he has the ability to be wrestled. And I was really interested in taking a look at Johnny Walker, who was much bigger, who I thought was a lot faster and even could have some grappling upside. When I look at the Billy Elikana, I did get to watch a fight or two of his. I don't think he's bad, but I don't think he's ready for the UFC by no means. He's only 8 fights in. I actually think he's probably not even worthy of a Contender Series shot yet. Skill's still improving on the guy, and I think he's bitten off more than he can chew here. And with the power and the hands down, the speed of Guskov, seeing what he's done to guys like Ryan Spann, I got to think that he's probably going to get Billy Elikana out here, and minus 300 price tag pretty much indicates the same. Kicking off the main card, Big Mouth, Kevin Holland taking on, one's own Renier de Ritter coming over for his second UFC fight. And this one's at middleweight, which makes it a little bit interesting. Anytime Kevin Holland's at middleweight and he's taking on somebody who wants to grapple him, it's quite tempting, man. And while Renner set it plus money for a while earlier in the week, I was pretty tempted to take the shot because he comes in there and he's very willing to grapple with GM3. That's clearly the game plan. And GM3 is a much better grappler than Kevin Holland is, a much bigger guy than Kevin Holland is as well, and was still able to have success and eventually submit him. And so part of me thinks that he is going to have success with Kevin Holland and find these takedowns and be able to submit him. Kevin Holland's a guy that I think has gotten some money from these fights, from fighting frequently, from taking the Hamzat fight. And I just think he's there for the money. I don't think he's there to be champion, where I kind of think Renner's there to be champion. He's kind of there to prove that he can hang with the best in the world. And Kevin Holland's there to fight anybody, anytime, anywhere. And, when the going gets tough, I don't know if he's going to gut one out. Now, on the feet, Kevin Holland's so much faster. He's a better striker, and he packs a lot of power. I would not be shocked if he does come out here and put Renier away. I've kind of flip-flopped back and forth. Tyler's got Kevin Holland. Let's make it interesting, man. I'll take RDR. Give me Renier de Ritter to come out here, get a second UFC win by submission. I think he's gonna put Kevin Holland away. Beneil Dariush, Renato Moicano, 155. Man, this is a killer fight. 2022. Beneil Dariush was the dark horse of 155. He was going out there putting on performances of a lifetime against guys like Gamrot. The Tony Ferguson at the time, and was in line for a title shot. Kind of fell in hard times, and since then found himself, getting finished in the first round by Charles Oliveira and by our title challenger and Arman Tsarukyan. And you see him sitting at plus 170 against a guy who 2 years ago he clearly would have been the favorite against, and it makes it a little bit tempting to play Benny here because I'm not sure if he's washed or if he was just caught by what I think is a better fighter, guys who were in their prime at the time. Moicano's, somebody who, like he says, he can't afford to lose. He's on an absolute tear right now, but, He's a follow-up shot from losing to Jalen Turner. He's a mistake away by Drew Dober from losing that fight. He's, you know, I don't want to say lucky to get through some of these, but he's really had to will his way through some of these, man, and to come in here a big, decent favorite over Beneil Dariush, somebody that I don't think he's going to have near the success grappling as he did a BSD or some of these other guys. And, you know, I think Renato Moicano has a suspect chin himself. It's close, man. I think ultimately, I think I'm going to side with the career trajectories. I like where Moicano's headspace is. I like where he's at right now. And truth be told, I think his skill set on the feet and on the mat, I think the guy's nasty everywhere. And I haven't seen indications that he could be past it where, again, competition level's been through the roof, but Benil's given me reasons to doubt him. So Tyler and I both on the Moicano side. A lot of agreements this card. Featured bout of the evening, 205, Jiri Prochazka versus Jamal Hill. Would have loved to see this for 5 rounds. Would have loved to see this for the belt and still may get to see this for the belt one day. You know, Jiri is a madman. His pressure, the pace is unorthodox, and he packs a ton of power, man. He, again, is a wild man in the cage, hardly ever going the distance in 36 fights. And it's a tough fighter to prepare for. I just kind of feel like his defensive tendencies are going to get him in trouble against a guy like Jamal Hill. And Tyler and I both are people that I don't, aren't the biggest fan of Jamal Hill. And, and I hate to kind of say that, but I'm not a fan of the way he kind of trains outside of fight camp and kind of lets himself get out of shape. I'm definitely not a fan of the way he's held on to this Alex Pereira loss. It kind of reminds me of the way that we've seen Dom Reyes in the John Jones fight. It's one where he's itching to get it back, and he really needs to focus on the guy in front of him because the guy in front of him is an absolute killer who's coming to take his head off. And I don't think he's ever won a decision. But, Jamal's one of a kind, man. His volume at light heavyweight is unmatched, and he has sneaky power. And I just feel like, again, the defensive liabilities of Prochazka are going to get him in trouble. So I like Jamal Hill by knockout. And then to our title fights, 2 high-level fights. Merab Dvalishvili defending his belt against Umar Nurmagomedov, making his first title defense. I think Umar's a world-class fighter. I was extremely impressed to see him watch him outstrike Corey Sandhagen the way he did, to land the takedowns, to have the cardio, despite not being, tested and pushed that much, to see him go 5 rounds after kind of having some slip-ups in his 3 rounds against, against the newcomer and don't want to pronounce his name wrong, Beksat. And so, I was impressed with the Corey Sandhagen fight. I think the guy is extremely well-rounded, much better striker than a lot of the Nurmagomedov family, and he's got the grappling in his back pocket as well, and really good jiu-jitsu. I just absolutely hate this line at all, man. It's, Umar has not done enough to show me that he's deserving of this line, and Merab has shown me that he is more than deserving to back at plus 2XX. The dude has got unlimited gas tank. He's got pressure and pace that nobody in UFC history has fought like. And when he's just coming forward, spamming takedowns, making you work, you're not able to get your offense off. And he just makes you fight defensive the entire fight. And I feel like a guy that I've seen go out there and beat world-class fighters like Aldo, put a clinic on Sean O'Malley, a clinic on Peter Yan for 25 minutes is 100% warranted, of a bet in my eyes. I think this fight is highly competitive. I think this fight goes to decision. And so I'm looking at a Merab money line, a Merab 4-5 decision. I think by weigh-in time, it's going to be a hard sell for me not to try to find a play on Merab. So I ultimately, I think Umar might win. You got his guys on the card, Islam, Ulanbekov. It's kind of set up for what feels like the Nurmagomedov family this week, but Merab might play spoiler, man. It's a super high-level fight for someone to be this big of an underdog. And again, I just kind of feel like you have to play Merab here. Speaking of having to play the underdog, Arman Tsarukyan and Islam Makhachev. Tyler and I both have played Arman north of plus 300. I think we've got plus 320, plus 325. These guys fought 6 years ago. Arman's UFC debut at 22 years old, and he gives Islam probably the toughest fight Islam had potentially had to date besides his only loss. And I think both of these guys have improved leaps and bounds, particularly in the striking. And we kind of always knew we'd see this fight all over again. MAKHACHEV, man, when I really kind of look at it, there's some red flags. The how close the Poirier fight was, how close he goes in a fight with a featherweight and Volkanovski, the troubles that he had there. I just feel like his body doesn't perform the best late in fights at 155. I think he really wants to go up to 170. And I think he's got a guy in Arman Tsarukyan who can, I don't want to say match the wrestling, because Islam's clinch game in wrestling is top notch. He's pound for pound one of the best, if not the best in the world. I just feel like Arman's proved that he can go toe to toe. His scrambling's nasty. He's not going to get stuck on bottom. He's not going to get submitted. And on the feet, I feel like he can hang on the feet as well. He throws bombs. He throws heat. I think he has a power advantage if he were to land. I think he's got the durability edge on the feet as well. And so ultimately, it kind of is just like the co-main event. This is such a high-level fight that I don't think somebody should be a plus 300. Arman Tsarukyan is a guy that I don't think should be plus 300 against anybody in the lightweight division. He's that high level of a fighter, and I think timing is everything, and I just feel like he's catching Islam at the right time in his career, and no two fights go the same. And I think if anybody could make the slight adjustments, to be able to really put a stamp and win that fight, when I watched the first one back, it's Arman Tsarukyan, man. So just like the Merab fight, I'm back in the underdog. I've already bet him for a unit. Too high level of a fight for the odds to be that wide. Islam wins. Am I shocked? Absolutely not. But I don't think he finishes. I think he wins a decision, maybe even a split decision if he does. I think there's value on Arman all day. That concludes all 14 fights, man. Keep an eye on Tyler and I's Twitter. I know, again, he's on a cruise. Plays for him might be later in the week. Already started to release some myself. So, again, keep an eye on Twitter. Appreciate you hanging out with me this week. We'll be back, both of us, next week, and we'll be back earlier in the week. Appreciate you hanging out with me. Peace.